Knowing when to form and build a board of directors is a challenge for many startup founders. And then once the board is formed, oh my gosh, how does a founder manage and communicate with the board? What are the best practices for managing this important process? Our guest is a seasoned startup investor and the co-author of Startup Boards, a field guide to building and leading an effective board of directors. And he has all the insights and advice you need to skillfully navigate this important segment of your startup's structure. Oh my gosh, you best be sharpening those pencils right now, founders, because you'll be taking lots of notes during this episode of the Startup Life Live Show. Let's go, everyone. Hello and welcome to the Startup Life Live Show. I'm your host, Ande, Lyons, 4 times founder and startup champion to founders around the world. And can I just say, what you all are doing as founders, or if you're thinking about starting that business, I have to tell you, huge applause for you for tapping into your courage and solving those problems and showing up every day for your startup. I am in awe and wonder of you and all you're doing. And I know there are days where you're like, hashtag why bother? What was I thinking? But today you are moving forward and I'm so proud of you. And I'm especially thrilled that you carved out time to tune into the Startup Life Live Show, because this is a great chance to up your founder game. And you know, as you do better, your business does better, right? I mean, there's no training for this. You can read all the books you want. You can go to all the seminars and workshops you want. But until you sit in the driver's seat as a founder, that is the only place that you'll truly learn what this journey is about. And as I always say, you always win when you launch a business, no matter what happens. Trust me on that. If you're tuning in live right now, big mwah, yoo-hoo, and hello. I'm so thrilled you're here. Be sure to pop questions and comments into the threads. We want to hear from you. We want to share this experience with you. And for the replay viewers, your comments and questions are always welcome. And podcast listeners, you've got my deepest appreciation for tuning in wherever you're glowing right now. And if you're watching the video, I'd love for you to hit that like button, because this way we can reach more founders. You know, this is a very isolating experience being a founder, and we can reach more folks and help them on their journey, then I appreciate you for doing that. If you're tuning in from YouTube and you haven't done so already, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you'd like to get the deep dive on all of my guests, join the Startup Life Live Meetup group. Hop onto Meetup and type in Startup Life Live, or scan the QR code there, or the links are in the show notes. And that way you'll get the scoop on who I'm having on the show. A little quick note for those of you who are female-owned businesses here in the U.S. If you haven't done so, if you're a B2B business and you haven't applied to get your WE Bank certificate, please do this, because there's money on the table. There are government contracts, corporate contracts that want to work specifically with female-founded businesses. And this is the gold standard. WE Bank is the gold standard for certification. And if you've hopped on there and gone, I have no idea, or you're so afraid to press the button and hit it, please email me, Ande@andelyons.com. I have helped all types of business, folks who haven't even started yet to get their certificate, to those who may be in millions a year. It's a pesky form, so I'm here to help you if you need me. Just ping me, Ande@andelyons.com. All right. I am seriously excited to introduce our guest today and to talk about this important segment of your startup life, because there's always confusion around startup boards, like when, what, where, how, and you might get some advice that is not in your best interest. So fortunately, today we have the one, the only Mahendra Ramsinghani. He has invested in over 50 pre-seed and seed stage companies and is the founder of Secure Octane, a cybersecurity seed fund based in the San Francisco Bay Area, formerly as Director of Venture Capital Initiatives for Michigan Economic Development Corporation. Mahendra led the legislation for 2 fund of fund programs in Michigan. And he's also, along with this book here, where he is a co-author, Mahendra is also the author of 2 books, The Business of Venture Capital and The Resilient Founder, which you're going to see right behind me on the shelf. But he's also the co-founder of this amazing book that's on the screen right now, Startup Boards. And he co-authored it with Brad Feld and Matt Bloomberg. Let's bring Mahendra into the show. Mahendra, welcome to the Starfly Live Show. Woo!
Thank you, Goddess Ande. I think our audience needs to know why I address you as Goddess Ande. Will you please share that story? Because I absolutely love that story.
Well, folks, if you don't know this, we talk about the goddess a lot here, but folks know me as Goddess Ande, and even my Gmail address is goddessande@gmail. What happened was I had a wonderful, divinely delicious gourmet granola business for 5 years called Goddess Granola, and I called myself the chief executive goddess. And so I would call, and I was in food service, so I'd call up, let's say Reebok or Comcast or, one of the hospitals, and they'd be like, "Hey, Joe, the goddess is on the phone." And it all stuck. But Mahendra, enough about me. I'm so glad that you were able to, catch the whole goddess feature and really take that on. Hey, Ruth, I just want to say a quick hello to Ruth. How are you, Ruth? So happy to see you and that you're here. Ruth is from Nairobi. She's our community manager. She's the one who always makes sure that you're here ready to glow and get your questions in. And April, Mama April, folks, if you haven't been to the Sure Company, go check out what April Carr Kelly is doing, a mom of like a bajillion kids, right? But she has launched a vegan baby formula. All right. And those of you who have babies with allergies to typical formula, you're going to want to know what the Sure Company is up to. And Mahendra, this is when I love to remind everybody to be sure to amplify their business, right? In the comment threads, because a lot of folks watch the replay here and listen to the podcast. And this is a great way to amplify your brand. So share your business name, one-liner, and website URL in the comments, and Mahendra and I will cheer wildly for you. But behind me here, everybody, I'm going to just do a real quick close-up of me, is Mahendra's other book, The Resilient Founder. We're going to be talking about that, but I have that there specifically. But Mahendra, where are you sitting right now? Geographically, where are you in the world? Oh, can't hear you. Oh, we got the mute. There we go.
Okay, is that better?
There he is.
Can you hear me now? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I am sitting in the beautiful city of San Francisco and delighted to be on this show where, thanks to you, we can connect with founders across the world.
Isn't it wonderful? I tell you, I waited my whole life for this moment to be able to reach people around the world in this way. But let's talk about you and before we get into Startup Boards and your remarkable work in the world, how did you come to the U.S.? You were educated in India. You've led a very interesting life, but I'd love to know how you got here and in your origin story. And, did a company bring you, or were you an adventurer who said, "Oh, I want to come to the U.S.?" How did you land here and started bringing your joy to the world here in the U.S.?
Well, first of all, I have to say, Goddess, thank you for this opportunity. This is the first time in my life that I'm being interviewed by a goddess.
So, folks, I can't get enough of this, right? I mean, I feel so seen.
so like they say in India, the god in me bows to the goddess in you.
Thank you, Mahendra. I love that. Thank you.
But the origin story, so I grew up in India. I did my engineering, got an MBA, and like all sort of growing population of India is like either you have to be a doctor or an engineer, and there are no other choices.
Right.
And I really enjoyed writing. I was sort of doing this little side hustle with a newspaper in India. I was writing, these what would be called blog posts for them, and they loved it. Over time, I moved to Singapore where I was working with a software company, and that was a very fascinating experience. Now, where I met my then girlfriend, now wife.
Yay.
And she happened to be working at this place called East Lansing, Michigan, which which I had no idea about living in Singapore. Like, what does a Spartan do? What is MSU?
Right.
So, like they say, all good men follow brighter, beautiful women. So I
That's
followed
right, as
her
they
to
should.
the US.
Oh, I love that. And so, and it is so important that we have that representation. The woman is doing incredible things,
Yeah.
and the man says, "Let me come join you where you are. I can always figure out what to do when I get there." And so, how did you figure out what you wanted to do?
Well, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do.
Oh,
But
there we go. That's the beauty of living a long life, right? Is that
yes, yes.
it's a new dream to be dreamed.
Yeah, but when I moved to the U.S., I kind of stumbled into this role at the state's Economic Development Corporation. Now I still remember the ad back in the day. This is '99. There were newspaper ads. So Sunday morning, I look at this ad that says somebody with an engineering business background to help the state grow founders and technology businesses. I'm like, that just sounds so awesome, right?
Right.
Having been a founder in India, having worked with founder-backed companies in Singapore, I felt like, wow, I could now play a role on this side of the table where
Yes.
you could design programs, policies to nurture the spirit of founders. So I applied, and I remember there were like 12 people in that waiting room when I walked in. And as soon as I walked in, it's like, oh shit, I don't think I'm going to make it, because I'm new to the country, and nobody knows me. I can barely, like pronounce Spartan, you know,
Or
but
Michigan.
but I was the fortunate one, and I spent 7 years there, where I had a very kind and a very thoughtful manager, Mike Finney. He was the one who started to talk about venture capital and say, "Don't you think that's more important for the state?" I said, like, Mike, but I have no idea what venture capital means. So he says, "Don't worry, you'll figure it out, but let's take the leap." And that's how it started.
Oh my gosh, because this is a huge impact. When you can work on the policy side of the table and bring the government in to support initiatives, because nothing, folks, will help a local economy grow than entrepreneurship. It is an economic boost. And when you provide founders, right, Mahendra, with the skill set that they need and the social capital they need and the money they need, you're going to benefit as a region, as a state, as a country. What was your experience once you got there? I mean, first of all, you got hired over everybody else. Hooray. And most importantly, you read the ad and you showed up, which was so exciting. And thank you for that stroll down memory lane for ads in the paper. But then, now you're on this team and you're starting to have influence. Did you have a mentor in the group? Who added wind to your sails? How did you know what to do and what to bring to the council?
Oh, this was the scariest phase of my career, Andy. What ended up happening was, not knowing what to do. It can be either paralyzing or it can be empowering. The way we empowered ourselves was we went and talked to our quote unquote our constituents. There were a number of venture capitalists in Michigan who were trying to raise their first fund. And I remember in particular Jan Garfinkel, this lady who was such a fiery, ambitious lady. In a very gentle way, she would very affirmatively say, "I want to be the best venture capitalist there is." And so I remember these first conversations with Jan that we started off with, and she ended up raising her first fund. We were able to help her as a state. We wrote her a check as an investment, not a grant. And she ended up becoming the chairman of the National Venture Capital Association. So when I look at the time and say what worked, I look at Jan and say, "Thank you, Jan, for doing what you did."
Oh my gosh. And I love that she set the bar high. I want to
Yes.
be the best.
Yes.
Why not? I mean, that's what Muhammad Ali has said every time he stepped into the ring, I'm the best. Because, if you're thinking that you're not the best, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
a mindset that is so important. And now being in this council, what I really love is that you began doing something that's so important to founders, which is building your social capital. You were new to the US, you were new to the state of Michigan, and now you got picked up by an organization that I am sure helped you start networking and building your social capital. What was that like?
Oh, it was fun. I think the way I look at America, the reason I still believe it is one of the greatest countries on this planet is that it is so welcoming of all people. And an immigrant, a person like me, is like a seed, but the soil has to be welcoming. It has to be
Mhm.
nourishing. So I sort of have a deep debt of gratitude to our people who are so welcoming, so kind. And I remember my first few years in Michigan, I made some great friends, and to this day we have this banter on text where we talk about all the cultural, educational things they did for me. One example that I can quote is East Lansing, home of Spartans. So I was wearing this green sweatshirt that my wife had given me, and I was walking down campus, and somebody was biking by saying, "Go green." And I asked my wife, like, he asked me to go somewhere. Where did he ask me to go?
What is this go green? Where am I supposed to?
Yeah,
Oh
like,
my gosh,
do I
that
turn
is
left to go green? So there are these so many stories. The other example that I remember very vividly was I made this presentation to our executive team, which would then report into the state treasurer, the governor, and so
yeah.
on. And our CEO says, Mahendra, you don't have to try and do everything that you presented. You just have to be a quarterback. And I kid you not, Andy, I had no idea what a quarterback was.
Of
So
course.
So as soon as I get
Okay.
out the meeting, I call my friend and say, "What is a quarterback? Is it something on the 25-cent quarter that I should look for? Is there a message there that I should look for?" So we had
Oh,
some great moments where people not only inculcated me in the culture of this country, but they gave me a chance. And I only say the reason I was able to serve was because the chance was offered. If people were to shut me out, like it would have
right.
been easy. Just pack my
Exactly.
bags and go back home.
But folks, this happens to you as founders as well, right? Someone
Yeah,
throws out LTV CAC ratio. You're like, what? MVP, what say, yeah, all of the acronyms, even
yeah.
IBITA. You're like, what? What is this language? I have talked to some founders who would be at a meeting and quickly going, I have no idea what that means. And they quickly Google it. So find out it's just in time learning. So your quarterback and Go Green story is so relevant for what so many founders are going through. Hey there, Peter. So happy to see you. How are things across the pond in London? Always grateful for your presence and your glow tuning into the show. I want to remind everybody we're chatting with the so amazing Mahendra Ramsinghani, and he is not only an investor, and we'll be talking a little bit about that, but he's the co-author of this wonderful book, Startup Boards: A Field Guide to Building and Leading an Effective Board of Directors. Links are in the show notes and how to order a copy for you, because you're going to want to know this. So Mahendra, then you went on to start investing yourself, and you said, and you focused it. I understand that you focus on seed rounds as a goal. How did this come about?
Well, this was a fascinating call of duty, Andy. GM filed for bankruptcy around 2007, 2008 time.
Yeah, that's
We
right.
had the mortgage crisis. And at that time, I got a call from this wonderful not-for-profit foundation in Detroit, Michigan, called Invest Detroit. And I still remember Dave Blaskowitz. He still runs that organization. He called me and said, "We need your help in Detroit. We need to build entrepreneurship in this wonderful city so that it can rise back again." And it was literally like, I still remember that meeting was a 10-minute meeting. I walked out shaking hands with Dave, and the next day I started. I had no idea what we were going to do. The foundation had just received $100 million from a group of foundations in Detroit,
Oh,
and these were really the pioneers of the region. They were looking into the future and saying, we cannot let this happen to our city.
right.
So I remember, there were a number of very thoughtful visionaries that came together, and they gave Invest Detroit $100 million. And so we carved out a very small piece of that 100 million. We actually just took 5 million and said, we are going to invest this across as many founders as we can. So our check sizes were very small, 50 to 100,000,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes a little bigger, sometimes a little smaller. But we wanted to impact as many people, as many founders.
Sure.
So it was
Oh,
a fascinating start.
oh my gosh. And Of note, sidebar, everybody, my husband's in Detroit right now, and he is blown away by how not only gorgeous the city is, but the infrastructure and everyone there. It's a thriving hub for so many good things. And it's because you all started that in 2008 and started investing in the state as well as in the city of Detroit and other cities throughout the state. And what a difference that makes. And founders, 50K, 25K, 100K, that's a lot of wind into your sales so you can get the traction and then increase valuation, which is so important for when you need to go for larger series. And so what did you learn from this experience? How did it inform you and impact you?
So it was probably the most fascinating time because on one side you had all this bad news coming about Detroit.
Right.
You had these cover stories on magazines and front page of the Journal or the New York Times. Pick any media. Detroit bashing was the cool thing, right?
Right.
And so we were trying to say, wait a sec, how can we change this? So we gave up on trying to change the image. So we are going to go to the grassroots and just work with founders. So the biggest lesson that we learned was not all founders are approaching their businesses with the veneer of venture capital,
Right.
with the tech veneer. I remember this lady who wanted to open a coffee shop. Yes. I remember one of the best investments we made was this gentleman who came and said, I provide IT services. I'm literally hooking up laptops, making sure they're on, making sure the wireless routers are working, making sure your antivirus, all of these basic services. I provide this to 75 customers, so 75 small businesses in Detroit, and a bank will not give me a loan, will you? And we went down this process of looking at it and said we cannot structure this as a pre-money valuation, blah blah blah. So we asked Darren, what is it? How do you think you'll repay us back? Because when you repay us back, the next founder in line will be successful. I can take that money and give it to the next founder. So go back, think about it, and come back to me. And he said, no, I'll tell you right now. Just like how we repay a bank back, we'll come up with a payment plan and we'll make sure that we live up on our side of obligations. And guess what? He sure did. And it was such a great example. And there are many such examples that don't make it to the land of unicorns or the land of venture. But this is what makes a city. This is what makes it alive.
Oh, it's what makes a region come alive because you're, first of all, you're creating an opportunity to change generational wealth trajectory for a person, but also that person's going to employ folks, get them the training they need, take them to another level, help keep operations, in this case with the IT, but also coffee will keep people fired up and ready to glow as well. And, one of my favorite quotes from Gary Vee is, I'd rather be happy in my Toyota than crying in my Ferrari. And, what he means by that is, folks, you can have a successful, business at 250K a year, 2 million, or 50 million, or if you're into world domination, yay. But don't ever let anybody minimize and belittle and marginalize you because your dream is like Darren's dream there. And you're looking for funding, you can pay it back. In this case, it's not that type of investment. It's a return that you'll be making. It's debt funding or grants or anything that you can get your hands on. Your dream is valid no matter what size you're at. Mahendra, speaking of goddesses, I'm going to just say a quick hello to Mia Voss. Hi, Mia. You'll have to go back to the beginning of the show because I feel so seen with Mahendra. He calls me the goddess. and he said the God in me honors the goddess in you. We love that. And folks who listen to the show, what do we do when Mia stops by? Oh yeah, we shout from the rafters all about her amazing podcast, Shit We Don't Talk About with Mia Voss, because these are the topics we do need to be talking about, and no one does it better than Mia Voss. So thank you, Mia, for stopping by, and we love your podcast. So Mahendra, when did you then set up your own fund? I mean, here you are with Secure Octane. Is that how you started to go into your own investment instead of other people's money?
Yeah, so that transition was equally fascinating because this was now I was shifting away from being an employee
Yeah.
to being an entrepreneur myself, and it was somewhat of a forced situation, and so we had to move to San Francisco because my wife's health was a little bit of a struggle at the time. She's
Okay.
thankfully
Oh,
better now,
so
but
happy to hear that.
yeah, but it was like a kind of a forced situation where life says, "Oh, let's see what you'll do in these circumstances. You think you're cool, right? Let's give you a little curveball here."
Let's
So
give you some adversity because you're going to find a golden seed in that adversity, but we're going to make sure it's tough enough so that you have a moment of struggling and deeper insight.
and so when we moved to San Francisco, as soon as I found out about the rent in San Francisco, my hair was black, and you see what happened. So this happened overnight. As soon as I found out, like, how much does the cost of living in the city.
Especially coming from Michigan,
Exactly. Where a month's rent here could take care of my whole year back
Right.
home, right?
That's right. That's
But
right.
but it was a fascinating time again because now you're forced to go back to the basics. You don't know anybody, and this is sort of the immigrant's journey that we relive many times without realizing it. That you're forced to start at zero. Okay? You don't know anybody, and you might have a little money or no money, and God bless, hope something works out. And so California, very different from obviously Michigan.
Right.
And in Michigan, people would talk about these Midwestern values. And I had no idea what they meant. It is like, a fish is inside water and fish does not know what water means till you take the fish out of water.
Right.
Then you know what it means, right? So when I moved to the city where it was rising, there was a lot of action going on. I was reminded that a lot of basic things that people did in Michigan was like if they made a promise, they lived up to it. If they, said I'm going to do something, they did it, right? And I noticed that basic cultural values that were imbibed in me when I was in Michigan, I could play that to my advantage in San Francisco because guess what? Very few people were doing what they promised they were going to
With all
do.
due respect. Oh,
So I had to make my way into a city with a lot of very smart people
yeah.
and a lot of money, obviously center of venture capital. And there were times when I felt like I don't think I can make it here. We should go back home. And
Right.
I didn't even know what home was. Is it Michigan,
What did you
Singapore?
want
Is it India?
here?
But it's again a lot of kind people here who opened the path for me, and especially founders who gave me a chance to serve them. And so now I spend a lot of my time helping founders to build cybersecurity companies so that we can have a safer
Yeah.
digital future. And yes, making money is part of the process. Making wealth is a part of the process, but only after we create value for others in society.
That's right. Service is key when you wake up every day, how you're serving the world with your gifts, with your glow. And so, how did you build social capital in your new town of San Francisco? And more importantly, how the heck did you meet Brad Feld?
Well, so building social capital in the new town was a lot more harder. Remember, my hair had turned gray, right? So, as much as we believe that equality exists, I could sense that, people were gently telling me, you might have appeared in this environment maybe 15 years ago. You might have had a chance, or all subtle things that remind you that, oh, have I missed the boat?
Right. Oh, God. We can feel that often, especially as we age, folks.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, the FOMO, fear of missing out. Sure.
yeah, and I think that look, that's natural. If that's the youthful culture is celebrated and rewarded, so I had to find my own way. So the reason I moved into a domain where cybersecurity is sort of my front and center is primarily because to start a cybersecurity company, founders have to have 5, 10, 15 years of experience. They really need to be in the trenches
Wow.
of all the challenges that they see in the modern day enterprise. And so, I had entrepreneurs who were as old as me, and very few people were truly able to embrace or understand them because they tend to be very technical in
Sure.
their thinking and their style. So some of my engineering background came to my rescue, and I was able to engage with them and say, "Look, I'll help you to figure out how to engage with the VCs, and I'll invest a small amount as a way to start the journey, but then I'll help you pull the rest of it together."
Nice.
So that's how it started, and it's been a fun ride. And to answer the second part of your question,
that's my favorite kind of, investor, everybody. The person who comes in, gives you some, wind, some oxygen, right, to keep going, but then helps you ask the tough questions and start understanding how you're going to get from point A to B, C, D, et cetera. And then the second part of the question, what was that?
about Brad Feld. So
Yeah,
believe
Brad
it or
Feld.
not, I've sort of been reading his blogs, and he was very active in sharing everything that he had learned. Very prominent investor. He'd taken companies public, managed funds that were much bigger than many funds. And so believe it or not, Andy, this is the spirit of America. This of Brad is very evident in this story. I sent him like this 5-line email saying that, Brad, I absolutely love what you do. Thank you for sharing your gifts with this world. And he had authored a book at the time called Venture Deals. And so that explained all the term sheet nuances to the founders.
Yeah.
And my first book, The Business of Venture Capital, had just come out. So I said, from one author to another, gratitude, love, and I have a few ideas maybe we can work on sometime. And literally like a few hours later, Brad responds and says, tell me, And so,
and folks, just so you know, that's kind of the kind of guy Brad is, right? Yeah. He is so open, so generous, and kind-hearted, just really an extraordinary human. And so you heard back in a few minutes, and what happened?
So it was such a fascinating opening. So I reached out to Brad. He then came to Michigan to do a tour for his Venture Deals book. So I met him there. And I shared this idea that, look, I see a lot of founders, and they are just like how they struggle to understand the term sheet, and you solve the problem for them with Venture Deals. I feel like once they raise the money, then they enter into this boardroom. And many times they don't know what to do. And many times we as board members don't know how to help them. So is there something that we can work on? And he said, I love the idea. Let's put something together. So that's how it started. And then, we spent a lot of time. And this was also a learning process for me to how do you collaborate with somebody who's much more, accomplished than you are.
Right. Oh my gosh. But it was ideal. And folks, wherever you are in your journey, LLC or incorporated, or you're planning on, not only you've raised the seed round, but you're definitely going for an A and a B and a C, you need to understand the journey of building an effective board of directors. And something we're very passionate about here at Startup Life Live Show is making sure it's a diverse board of directors. So you're meeting all your customers' needs as well as your business's needs. So let's start at the very beginning, Mahendra, and talk about when does a startup need to establish a board?
I'd say day zero, Andy, day zero, because the notion of a board is so valuable, and many times founders are in the rush to say, I need to get my customer, I need to raise money, et cetera, et cetera.
And so from day one, and this can be advisors, right? It can be someone like Mahendra coming on board and helping. We've got so many great local here in the Boston area, folks who are brought on as boards. And we had a phenomenal female founder who knew that she just, her idea and app was amazing, but she knew that it would never get funded if she didn't have a board. And frankly, she wouldn't get funded if she didn't have really prestigious board members. And she had the courage to go after them and appeal and get them on board, which really helped her raise 38 million in a short period of time. I'll put that episode into the show notes, folks. It's a fascinating story. So, what does a founder need in the beginning? Do they need 1, 2, 3 members on their board? How does that start?
So I think the ideal way to start is to say, what do I need as a founder in the next 24 months? Okay. Wow. My idea, my business is a concept. How do I build this from this concept to my first 30 customers? Okay. And if you start the journey that way and say, what are the insights, the wisdom, the experiences I need to get to my 24-month mark, not 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, but just the near future, the tangible future. And you say, you need somebody who knows how to build product. You need somebody who knows how to do sales. And more importantly, you need somebody who can help you with strategy and finance. Okay.
Right.
So there are some people you can hire, but then you need to sort of do payroll. But there are advisors that you can bring on board, and a lot of them do work either pro bono or for some modest options because they're not there in it just for the money. Yes, money is important, it helps us pay our bills, but they're there to sort of nurture the next generation and say, I too once was like you struggling, and I too once had these questions. Let me try and make the path a little easier for you if I can.
See, and I want to thank you for that. I mean, to me, folks, I'm having an Andy-licious moment. Hold on. It's so hard sometimes to reach out to someone and have them on board because you're like, why me? But you have to remember this is so enticing and exciting. What you're building, founders, is something that it can be very appealing to a board advisor, a board member, that they're going to live vicariously through you. It's kind of like grandparenting. I mean, they're there to give you all that great advice, but then they get to go home and have a cocktail and not worry about anything. But in all seriousness, you are giving them an experience that money cannot buy, which is in the hope and possibility of building a business that makes it and adds value and solves a serious problem for folks. What are your thoughts about that, Mahendra?
No, absolutely. I feel I'd want to inspire every founder to say, reach out to the giants that are around you and cast a wide net. Think about if you're building a band, you want the best guitarist, you want the best drummer, you can be the lead singer. Or if you're the best guitarist, then find the best lead singer. But cast a wide net, aim big, and do not underestimate yourself. The fact that you're starting a company is in itself a huge leap. And remember, every founder that you reach to add to your advisory board was once in that same shoes, lonely, afraid, and they made it, right? So they came over their fears, and they made the progress gently, steadily. And that's a motivation for them. My second motivation, I joke with my technically savvy founders, is that you guys make me smart. One example is there's a company that is protecting machine learning models from hackers. Okay, let me step back. I don't claim to understand how all the machine learning works. Okay, I mean, let alone how it works. I have no idea why hackers want to attack a machine learning model to start with. So when they sit down with me, I tell them, look, I'm going to become way more smarter than you are at the end of this meeting. And they kind of laugh and say, what do you mean? It's like, look, I have no idea, because the problem that you see, you are on the front lines and I'm sitting at the back. I have no idea what problems you're facing and new problems that you're trying to solve. So it is the entrepreneurs are educating us. They are telling the rest of the world, I see something happening there. We should pay attention. And if we don't pay attention, the spirit of the entrepreneur dies, and worse, the problem never gets solved.
This is so true. I love every word of what you just said, and that's a great example. I feel that way with many of my guests I have on the show. You're doing what now? And by the time we're done, I'm like, I got it. It's a wonderful business model. So let's talk about some of the legal requirements, because a lot of founders, they get incorporated, many of them in Delaware, and they followed the advice, but they don't actually maybe have legal counsel on board in an important way, which is the fiduciary.
Yeah.
You are responsible, folks, to have an annual meeting. You have to talk about who are the board of advisors, who are the shareholders. You have to have these minutes put into your Inc. documents. What have you seen founders, mistakes they've made in this category, and how would you advise them for their board?
No, thank you, Andy. This is an important area that a lot of founders either do not realize or try to save money by not spending it with counsel or not paying attention to these requirements. Now, of course, rule number one is that these requirements become a lot more important when you take money from investors. If it's just you and your spouse, or, I'd say family, then of course these requirements are different. But the moment you take outside capital, then having an annual meeting, making sure you report to your shareholders, and you report with intellectual honesty. What does that mean? How do you make sure that you communicate with your investors in a way that is both honest and empowering? So these are skills that need to be learned, but a good attorney, like we joke in our business, a good attorney will save you from yourself. You know?
Oh yeah. It's to me, everybody knows this, right? The three most important dream team members you on board from day one: attorney, accountant, and insurance broker to
Yeah.
protect you. That is so important. And we cannot stress that enough, folks. You founders who are, again, incorporated and are raising capital and are bringing in funds into your business, please hire the best attorneys you can. And it's an important investment in your business to make sure you're doing things properly. And so the board, their responsibilities, and they're going to change, right? You've got your seed stage board, you've got your series A, B, C, D board. Things evolve. How many members are needed based on a stage of funding? And also, what are the board's responsibilities? And then, folks, we're going to talk about your responsibilities to the board.
Sure, sure. When we look at the size of the board, that's somewhat flexible.
Mm-hmm.
And I encourage founders to not go on the extremes, which is, oh, I'll just be the CEO, the chairman of the board myself. Well, that doesn't help. And then if you have like 11 or 15 members on your board, that becomes a very different challenge. So I'd say crawl, walk, run. Start with a small, 2 or 3 member. 3 members is ideal for early stages of the company. And then as the company starts to grow, always keep asking, what does this company need for the next 2 years? I mean, think of the company like a little baby, going back to a grandparenting analogy, and here's a little baby. And for the first 2 years, it needs, a lot of hugging and a lot of, diaper changing and a lot of food. Simple, right? But once it starts to play with toys and run around, then you need to say, oh, wait a sec, I need a bigger yard. I need to get them out and buy a bicycle. Right? And I need to protect them from these sharp corners. And then they become teenagers. Then they become, so I'd say, think of the company as a baby that's going to grow. Right. And you are the parent and you have this incredibly wonderful responsibility. And the board is trying to make sure that we can relieve you on occasion you want a date night. You can relieve you of some activities that you either don't feel like doing or don't want to do, right? So as this company grows, I mean, I've seen the boards usually start at 2, 3, and then go on to 7, sometimes 9 or 11 at public stage companies, because there are different committees that need to form. But the notion of this board is we are serving the CEO and hence serving the company. And so the legality there is the board keeps the CEO, I would say, accountable, but also is there to nourish and support the CEO.
I love that, something fierce, and especially founders understanding that component. But who is in charge? Okay, because we bring on our board, and we'll talk about compensation in a second. But I always wonder, and I know other founders have wondered, who's in charge as far as the buck stops here. I'm the boss of you. All of that. How does that work, Mahendra?
So when it comes to being a founder and a CEO of a company, you're in charge of the company. Yes. Okay. But when it comes to the shareholders, you have to remind yourself that your duty is twofold now. One is a duty of care to the company. Duty of care and duty of loyalty are the two duties of every board member that are often highlighted in some of the legal and other materials out there. As a CEO, you take all the operational responsibilities and decisions. As a board, the buck stops at the board when it comes to taking all decisions that impact all the shareholders. So, for example, if the CEO says, I want to sell the company, well, that decision impacts all the shareholders. So you have to ask the investors, you have to get a vote, you have to share the rationale for selling the company. Is it a good outcome for everybody? Many times it's not a good outcome, but you still have to follow what is called due process when certain decisions are made. So the buck stops with the board when it comes to impacting all the shareholders, and at an operational level, the buck stops at the CEO.
Right. And so what's the best way to communicate with boards? I know founders who every month they work so hard to get that, as you called it, intellectual honesty, newsletter or email out to their boards. Is monthly enough? Is that too much? What do you recommend for communication? And then let's talk about how's the best way to communicate with the board.
This is sort of a classic relationship challenge, and the best analogy I can think of is, when uh, two friends or spouses or husband and wife, you know, as they come together, they have to figure out what works in a healthy communication
Yeah.
plan and a strategy. And so many times founders make certain assumptions about how they want to communicate with boards. Or boards have this notion that, oh, I expect this founder to send me an update every week. And the problem is, nobody has shared this with each other saying, "Hey, here's a list of my expectations. What are yours? How can I make sure that I'm meeting your standards and you're meeting mine?" None of this happens. Okay. 9 out of 10 times, everybody's rushing to close the round, write the term sheet, wire the money, blah, blah, blah. And then like 2 months go by and suddenly people are angry. Like, oh, what just happened? Like, we were dating and we were meeting 3 times a week and going out for candlelight dinners. And then once we got married, like, I don't even get to see you for 2 months. What happened? So, it's like a very simple, I have a cheat sheet, like a list of bullet points to say, in terms of communication, I want to understand what will work for you. And this is what I need so that as a fund manager, I have to report to my shareholders. I have this, sitting on my head that I want to make sure that I'm reporting back to them. So many times founders don't appreciate that VCs are also playing the same role as a founder and they're reporting to their shareholders. So this flow of communication needs to be transparent, it needs to be healthy. And more importantly, if there are problems, then how can we step in? So building that trust, building that level of confidence where we can text each other anytime, we can call each other at the middle of the night is very important. And I think it's a two-sided thing. VCs don't do a good job themselves of nurturing this, and founders get too busy spending the money. And so you have a classic problem that occurs.
And I've seen founders just become almost paralyzed because this is a deliverable they just can't seem to get to. So I think you're absolutely right. Setting up the expectations from day one. Board, you have your first board meeting. By the way, that's an important document that goes into your ink folder, everybody, your incorporation documents. You have your meeting and you say, okay, here's what I'm thinking about for how I'll be communicating with you. I'm going to be very transparent and honest, but I'm not going to share every nail biting moment with you. But if I do need your help, you can count on me reaching out in other times. But this is how I'm going to communicate. Will this work for you? What are your expectations? Get that all ironed out, everyone, just like you would with a talent that you were onboarding, making sure everyone's clear about the communication and be honest about your own communication style. So if you are overwhelmed, you can still send out a quick blurb saying, oh my gosh, here's quickly what's happening. Or if you love video, do a quick video and send it out. But just don't ghost the board, right? Yeah, that's so important.
Absolutely. Communication is essential, but also, when I put myself in the shoes of the founders, sometimes they get afraid to share the bad news. Sometimes they feel like I only need to be the bearer of, look at all this growth, look at all of this. And I feel like as a culture, especially in startups, that needs to change. My request to all founders is think of the board as people who are trying to help you solve problems.
Right.
Do not think of them as this body that you report to and you have to bow down and they will then read a report card back.
Yeah, that's an employee paradigm mindset, everybody. Don't fall into that trap. These people are equals with you. They are part of the folks who are deploying and participating in your company's success. Use them.
And philosophically, Andy, I feel like our money is useless without the energy of the founder. It is, like that analogy of fertilizer. It becomes a pile of stinking,
nothing.
But when you spread it around and you put it in the hands of founders,
yeah,
that's when it starts to grow. So these are two wheels of the same cart. One without the other is not as effective. And we support each other. We grow with each other. And that's the philosophy. That's as simple as that. There is no hierarchy here. It's just that a group of people believe this problem needs to be solved. You bring your intellect, I'll bring a little money, and then let's go. Let's see what we can do. And, so some of the best examples that I can quote is where people like Brad and others, I've also followed their footsteps, is we have lost all the money and the company is shut down. Nothing worked, but we became such great friends, you know. And so those are the founders that I respect, is that, hey, in face of extreme adversity, you're transparent, you're fighting a good fight, you're letting me contribute to the solution. And look, if it doesn't work, we all know we tried our best and it didn't work. And, so Matt Blumberg, who's the third co-author that came in for the second edition, Matt was the CEO, Brad was on his board for like 10 years, or even longer. And so that's where this dynamic started. So in the first edition, it was just two VCs writing this book. This second edition, we said we need a CEO's perspective. Right. So Matt became a part of the board and a part of the co-authorship. And then Jocelyn, she made sure by writing the preface and the introduction that we, talk about diversity, we talk about inclusion, we talk about, gender, race, all the things that boards have sort of ignored or not paid attention to.
Right. And so how do you encourage founders to take those steps for diversity from day one? I mean, the women are out there going, gosh, we're 50% of the population here. And what? You can't have a woman on your board? What is that all about? Who wouldn't want a woman on your board? Who wouldn't want a person of color on their board? Who wouldn't want a disabled person? Which reminds me, let's just say a quick hello to Brent from Ottawa, Canada. He is a diverse person and a loyal fan of the show, and he understands that diversity is important on boards and a seat at the table is important, but also for our folks with disabilities and neurodiverse disabilities. Those are the invisible differences that are also so important as we move forward as a society, to have a well-rounded group, because it's not just for you, the founder and the board, but for your customers. You want to be relatable to all customers. And so by having all the different voices, how do you talk about that in the book, about the diversity?
So this is a huge challenge, Andy, and I believe as a startup culture, even as a country, US has a long way to go. Our friends in Europe has done a much better job in, welcoming diversity of all kinds. And I think the policies, even some regulations in countries like Germany, they've been on the forefront of making sure that companies are following these practices. In the book, we encourage the founders to start by imagining a dream team and going and recruiting that dream team. Yeah. And in that dream team, we talk about the importance of, don't ignore the other 50% of the population, because, hey, look, the reason I was born was because of my mother. Don't forget that. I have a sister, I have a daughter, I have a spouse, and we get so locked into this target that we want to either raise money or build our revenues.
Or we went to college with them, or they were on the team with us. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's a forced function many times, because many times when founders come to us, say, we are raising around, what's the board going to look like? They've not thought that through. And so Matt Blumberg, to his credit, his most recent startup, Bolster, is trying to solve that exact same problem by saying, we're going to create this repository of profiles and people, and we're going to match them with startups, and we're going to match them in an intelligent, thoughtful, and a comprehensive way where diversity, all the different issues that come up in startups, we're going to solve that problem. So, I love Matt for that reason, is that he is saying, I'm not going to sit around and just complain that, people are not doing anything. I'm actually going to solve the problem.
Yes. I'm going to get all the scoop on that and put it into the show notes, folks, because we need to focus on that. So I have two more questions about Startup Board. One is, how do we compensate? So, of course, some board members are already investors, so that's a done deal. But a lot of times we might be bringing in someone in our industry who may not be investing money, but they want to invest time, their expertise, their social capital, et cetera. What are your thoughts and advice for compensation of board members?
So, that's an important topic. I would encourage all founders to not ignore this topic. And I would encourage any potential board members to make sure that they don't do anything for free. Okay. The fundamental reason here is that compensation is a modest way to recognize the value that you receive. This person is going to take some time out of their day. They have, they could be reading a book. They could spend time on the beach, but they're choosing to think about their problems and help you solve those problems. Okay. They're helping you create value in your company. They're increasing shareholder value, as we all know.
And
So
they're,
how should we think about compensation?
yeah, and
There
they're
are
bringing,
some.
I just want to say one more thing before you go on is that they're bringing decades of experience, their lived experience, what they've seen and done. So they're going to save you so much time and money. Go ahead. So when you're looking at the
Exactly. I
package,
think, if you look at the collective decades of experience with 3, 4 members, 5 members, it is going to save you so many kind of mistakes of the past, so many traps. It is going to bring efficiency. Oh, I need somebody who can do this. Let me connect you. You could spend 6 months with a recruiter trying to find a person, or I'll connect you by the end of the day with 3 people. What do you prefer, right? So, but founders often struggle to prescribe a value to this. Okay. Now, what they end up doing is follow this formula, which I am not a big fan of, but it is what it is, right? They'll follow a formula saying, oh, you're an advisory board member, we will give you 0.25% of a company or 0.5% of a company. Okay. So this is sort of a classical approach, which is sort of, I wouldn't say industry standard, but it is considered to be okay, where 0.25, zero point 0.5, or 1% of the company is offered to the board member in exchange of their time. And this is stock, offered in stock, especially at the startup stage, because you don't have a lot of cash. And the stock typically vests over a period of time. So that way the relationship stays productive. And if you have to part for whatever reason, you have a clean departure, etc. Now, as companies progress, so for example, one of my VC friends is on a board of a company that has 40, $50 million in revenues. They pay an annual fee, $100,000. Not bad at all, right?
yeah.
So I feel like the value that you get and the value that the board members get has to be not necessarily life changing, but it has to be respectful. It has to be meaningful. It has to be a recognition of the time and effort people are putting in.
Yep. Honoring everybody, honoring. And to that end, what happens if you get a board member who it felt really good in the beginning? The candlelight dinners were delicious, and you're moving along, but a year down the road, you're finding out some other things about them. And you're like, oh boy, I've got to move this bad apple on. How do you off ramp?
So it's easier to off ramp the advisory board members, but it's a lot more harder to off ramp a toxic investor board member. And we spend a lot of time in the book because we've seen these situations firsthand. We're in the room, the investor cannot be fired because the investor has bought that board seat, as we say, which is why the first chapter of the book talks about spend a lot of time on the front end. It's almost like you're interviewing this person. Be very sure what you're getting into on an emotional, on the EQ level. Because the financial numbers, if you agreed to, hey, you're going to invest 5 million in my company, this are the terms, God bless, easy. But what you don't know is what happens after you get that 5 million. I mean, I could be texting you 10 times a day and I could make your life hell. And we've seen that happen. We've seen board members who have never run a company become very toxic. They meddle into affairs. And it's very hard to do anything about them, because
Right.
they have essentially bought their seat. So say spend more time on the front end, especially with the investor board members. Talk to other CEOs that they have backed. Reference check them as much as possible. And look, nobody's perfect, but you'll find, hey, out of their 10 qualities, 6 or 7 work for me, and I'm going to go with this.
Boy, I got to tell you, folks, references for investors, period. If you need my phenomenal 10, it's not mine, it's actually Alex Iscold's questions to ask investors, just ping me. I'll send you the link. It's phenomenal because so often we're like, please, may I have some money? Instead of thinking, are they good for us? Is this a good fit? And asking those really tough questions. Oh my gosh, I am just like, on all this great information that you're providing us about boards because we have to, and we're constantly growing as founders. As you know, you're in the trenches with founders all the time. And, it can be like a deer in the headlights, like, what now? Right. But you need to just continually to up your game. And Mahendra and the whole team here on this phenomenal book, Startup Boards, a field guide to building and leading an effective board of directors, will save you so much time and so much trouble. Can we take a few seconds to talk about your most recent book, The Resilient Founder? Let me just bring this up, everybody, so you can see this. This is so important. You all know how arduous this journey is. And some of our founders, we don't know, but they aren't doing so well. And you can easily get so overwhelmed and sink into negative thoughts and not feeling good about yourself. And so, how does this book help founders? Talk a little bit about the resilient founder for us.
So, Andy, as investors, I keep reminding myself that we are in service of this entrepreneurial spirit. Whatever resources we can bring to them to nourish that spirit and help them achieve their best. So the first phase of this journey was trying to understand how the money flows, so venture capital. Then once the money goes in the hands, how that sort of board dynamic is productive. And then I noticed this challenge that founders would either not talk about, or they would kind of suffer in silence. And I lost a founder to suicide. It was one of the toughest phases of my career was, and we as investors, like, we'll say this with a lot of pomp and ego. Oh, I'm the first and the last call the founder will make whenever they're in trouble. Guess what? This founder had like 6, 7 leading investors. He called nobody. And that was a wake up call for a lot of us. So I ended up interviewing almost 100 founders. But I started with Brad first, Brad Feld, my co-author, because he was, as an investor, very open about his challenges with depression and how he was navigating everything. He was write these long blog posts. And I was like, wow, man, this guy is, when it comes to being authentic, there is no better person, no better role model. So
and folks, and I just want founders to understand this, Mahendra, that it doesn't matter how many businesses you have, right? Oh, a seasoned founder, 2, 3, 4, 5, it doesn't matter. Each business comes with a whole new level of challenges, and other things happen in life. And one of those businesses could just take you down to a place that you'd never been before, right, Mahendra?
Absolutely. And, the notion is that only startup founders suffer from depression. But here's Brad, a highly accomplished investor, taking companies public. His funds are $500-600 million funds, right? So that's a very humble reminder to us that money and all these notions of success, when I look at this founder, when I look at my own journey that I've suffered through some dark nights, you cannot explain when you or how you land up there. Okay. Being in startups improves your probability of landing up there for sure.
Absolutely.
So this book was about 3 different parts. I interviewed founders to say, and these 100 founders were either in medication, in therapy, or they had given up their startups. They were in a very dark place or coming out of dark places. So I asked them, like, what are ways you have coped? What is your advice to other founders? So that was part 1. The second part was I ended up talking to some therapists. And so Jerry Colonna, who's authored this fantastic book called Reboot, I got a lot of inspiration from Jerry, where he says, we are all complicit in every situation. We just don't either recall, or we don't force ourselves to ask, how am I complicit in this situation? Okay.
Right.
What am I doing? What am I saying that the world is not listening to? And what is the world telling me that I'm not listening to?
Right.
So he asked these very deep questions. I'm like, Jerry, I love you. I'm going to start, with that inspiration. And so as we looked at the journey, I talked to people of that ilk, coaches, therapists, to gather some advice. And then the final section of the book is about what worked for some of these founders. And, it was simple stuff, Andy, nothing too fancy, like drink less coffee, go to bed in time.
Set up a strict routine in your life so you have, a way to compartmentalize. Take that. I mean, Stephen Covey, he always talked about taking that one day off. This is what happens to so many founders. It's almost addiction, right? They get addicted to their business, to the workflow, to that level of output, that the idea of even taking one day off is inconceivable. But boy, you have to recharge. And you have to also do the self-knowledge, right, Mahendra, to understand what are your needs as a person. I mean, I struggled with insomnia for decades until I met a guy who knows sleep, PhD here in Boston. And he said, you're trying to get too much sleep for who you are. You only need 6 hours of sleep. Once I shifted to like that, I only have this window to sleep in. What insomnia? I mean, it's like, what? So, there are things out there that I know in the Resilient Founder that you're talking about and you're exploring. So folks, I highly recommend, along with the Startup Boards book, get the Resilient Founder, because you're going to hear someone's story in this book, or hear a different therapist's idea of how a tool that will work for you, a suggestion, a mindset hack. We talk about that a lot here on the show. How do you get yourself out? Mindset hacks to get yourself out of those dark days of the soul. Everybody has something that they uncover that works for them. But remember, folks, you've got to have people in your life that love you no matter what. They don't identify you as a founder. They identify with you as a beloved in their life. They don't care. They're there to help you get through when you have failures and missteps, but they do not look at you and say, you are your business. No, no, no. So please remember that. And when you're looking around at your beloveds, don't look at them as like, well, if you're not part of the solution, get out of the way. You got to keep nurturing those relationships. Oh my gosh, Mahendra, you are so delicious to talk to. I want to have you back as we get near the holidays, because that's an especially stressful time for founders. And we're going to dive deep into the Resilient Founder. But folks, I want you to know that book is there for you as well, to make sure that you maximize the joy and minimize the heartache from your founder journey. Any last thoughts, Mahendra, before I pop you into the green room?
No, this has been so delightful. Thank you for all the work you're doing to support founders. I hope that your tribe increases.
Oh, listen, what you shared today is invaluable, and founders for years to come, seriously, will benefit from this conversation, from your work in the world. You're having such a huge impact. We are all grateful that you took time to write this book, that you are on purpose to helping founders everywhere you go. Thank you.
To the goddess in you, from the god in me.
Namaste. I'm going to pop you to the green room for just a second. I'll be with you. Don't go anywhere. Everyone tuning in, thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope you got what you needed from our conversation with Mahendra, especially on what you need to do to manage that board. Let it absorb. Come back, look at this a few times, and get the book right here. The Startup Boards, a field guide to building and leading an effective board of directors. Go to www.startupboards.com. It'll all be in the links are in the show notes, because this will help you. This is such an important part of your function as a founder. Okay. Guess who's coming on next on the Startup Life Live show? It's Donna Serdula. And oh my gosh, does she have LinkedIn optimization down to a science? And that's what we're going to be talking about, how to leverage LinkedIn for your startup. Donna is a leading authority on LinkedIn profile optimization, and she's sharing how you can build your authority as the leader of your new business while appealing to potential investors, business partners, and talents. I mean, you are no longer an employee, you are an owner. You are a founder. So what you did on LinkedIn for an employee is not what you want to have up there as a founder. So please tune in. And how do you know whenever I post a new show? Well, you're a member of the Startup Life Live meetup group. Woohoo! And hop on over there. And that way you get a deep dive whenever I post a new show. Before I leave, please promise me that you'll remember you're braver than you believe. You're smarter and stronger. Well, you're stronger than you seem, right? You've got some muscles in there that you're building. But as we say here in Boston, you're wicked smarter than you think. So keep going. You've got this. Stay in touch. Reach out to me online. Hop on over to Instagram if you want to see what I'm up to on a daily basis. I'm wishing you a delicious day everywhere you glow. Until next time, mwah, everyone.